The first day of the summit, 2024 Impact started strong, bringing together experts in law and finance from around the world. We heard Alvaro Acevedo shared his expertise in tax law.
Luis Carlos Contreras is a systems and data engineer with over a decade of experience in software development and data analysis, winner of the National Innovation Prize from Universidad del Valle de Guatemala. He has worked in various roles such as Research Associate at Google.org, Director of Data Intelligence, and Chief Technology Officer at
Luis Carlos Contreras is a systems and data engineer with over a decade of experience in software, technology and data analysis, skilled in customer service, strategic planning, and business development. Troy has proven his ability to lead in transform organizations. He holds an MBA Director of Data Intelligence and Marketing from Technology Officer at Programa Valentina. On reducing resource ranges consumption and enhancing recycling strategies for education to implement to have him with us at the GCE Summit in various organizations. Today, please welcome the GCE Troy Summit Impact 2024. We present to you Luis Carlos Contreras.
Some people wonder what AI will do for them in the future. I don't need to wonder, because that AI future, I'm building it.
Welcome to our no heroes and villains. Welcome to we've.
And these days I'm working with PatientPoint, which is a healthcare technology company based in the US. We operate in the whole US. We have 800,000 devices installed at patient locations. That means hospitals, clinics, medical rooms, everything. It is a huge company. It is a ton of data. It is a lot of data that we manage over there. And it's healthcare data, so you know how private that information is. And that's probably what I'm gonna talk about today, like what I'm gonna do emphasis on. Because first, let's talk about AI. Like, we all know about AI, we've used it, we've been hearing about it since pretty much the last few years, like maybe since 2020 or so. And we know that AI has a huge role in our companies. Like, we know AI is not the future, we know it's the present, we know how to use it, we know what AI can do for our companies, we know a lot of AI. But today I want to talk about AI in the context of sustainability. And usually when you talk about sustainability, you imagine something like this. So for example, Google was able to reduce their energy costs on their data centers when they changed the electricity control to one that was based on AI. So they used AI instead of their normal, let's switch the electricity on and off and on and off. They added an AI-based controller, and the AI-based controller saw the demand that they have in electricity and dynamically turned the cooling systems on their data centers, and they were able to save 40% on their electricity bill. That's a huge saving. That's a lot of savings for them. That's really great for the environment. That's really great for all the carbon emissions. That's really nice. That's very sustainable. But over here, we as professionals we usually mostly think about projects. We need to think about programs. And when we talk about sustainability, we need to think about what makes a project sustainable. You know that a nice project is sustainable by itself. I've worked with NGOs, I've worked with nonprofits, I've worked with the UN and some other stuff, and you know that some projects are just not sustainable. You know that some projects right from the get-go will not get anywhere because they are not sustainable in the future. That's the sad reality. And when I want to talk today about sustainability, I want to turn our projects into sustainable projects. That's what AI is for. So today I wanted to give a simple example of how AI can work in our projects, in our companies, in our professions. So if you could help me with this, we will have a nice experiment today. So if you could help me just scanning this QR code, we are gonna make a simple demonstration of how this works. This will take you to a Google Forms. That Google Forms is just a simple place where you can enter information. Please, and it's on the instructions, but I cannot stress this enough, use fake data. Do not put your real name on the form, please. Put someone else's name. Please don't put the name of the person that's right beside you. Please use another name, someone who doesn't work with you, someone who you don't know. Please invent a really cool name if you want to. This is fake data. We are just generating data. And as you can see, this is the simplest of Google Forms. I know that, 90% of you have filled a Google form before. It is everywhere. It is very simple. It is nice. It's a simple tool for collecting data. This data collection is what companies usually do in a ton of different ways. Most of you know that your phone is spying you all the time, right? Like pretty much all the time. You've worked about, you have talked with someone else about something nice to buy. You have looked for something on the internet, and then the advertisement, the publicity, everything is over there. And you know that this data is being collected. I think we all know that we are being tracked. Right now, let's do this experiment where we are going to willingly give our information to this database. That database will look something like this. This is just, again, the simplest of Google Forms. So please fill in the information as you need it. This will take like a minute or so let's give it a small second. I will need some answers for you, so maybe like 15 or 10 answers will be nice. We can see them over here, so again, please put information that won't compromise anything. See? Okay, so what are we gonna do with this? We are gonna build an AI system. So today you will be AI developers with me. We are gonna build our own AI chatbot, and we are gonna build our own AI model. So here, let's see if we already have enough information. We have like 80 or 10 answers. Let's give it another try, maybe a little bit more. And then we can start playing with this data. So please take your time, but please try to make it a little bit fun as well. If you want to put profits of millions, 100 millions, or whatever, make it fun. Play with it. 999, whatever you want to put in over there. Okay, so let's see if we can start working with this. Let's give it a little bit more time. I think we're fine. Okay, so if we now have the answers, this will be a very simple database. So this is a database where we have a list of professionals. These are the people who are attending. And we from them have their names, their country, their gender, their age, their profession, and how much they profited in the past few years, and how much do they charge for their work. So we have this information from them. I just passed this information through an AI model. Let's do it again. And now we can start asking questions. Let's say, for example, assuming this is a data set of professionals, why is the country with the highest total profit in 2022? Let's see, and how much was that? Let's just make the question. Now it will be taking a look. And it says that the highest profit came from Cayman Island, and it was, what, 7 billion, 17 billion, something like that. It was really high. So you can see that we have this data. We just collected this information, and right now we are asking questions in natural language about this data. Today, Jacqueline made a really nice comment about how we don't have time to actually go through all of this. Like usually, and this is very funny because I've seen these cases where there comes the CEO, the CFO, or whoever, and they ask something like, let's say, profit from last year. And what they are giving is a report, an Excel spreadsheet, and they have to go through that Excel spreadsheet and start looking for the exact information they need. And sometimes the person, let's say the CEO, is not very financial savvy, or that's not their main topic maybe, and they have to start looking for it, and they will lose a lot of time just doing that research. So let's say that they wanted to do something more fun with the information. Let's say they want to know where to invest, for example. So let's say that someone just has the information of a global company, let's say GCE or something like that, where we have operations in a lot of different countries, and we have the financial results from all of these countries, and now we want to know where is the cheapest place to place a new office, for example, or where do you need to hire people from. And let's say that you want to ask these questions, but you don't want to go through financial statements from 10 different countries from the last 10 years, and you don't want to spend all your time doing this kind of research by yourself. Let's say that you have your own data, and let's say that you are just asking natural questions using natural language. So let's say, for example, that you did something like this. Let's say that you ask who had the largest profit in 2023, and you can see that Camila has the largest profit, and then you know now that you can go through this information way faster than the way you will usually do it. Like, we all know how AI works for this, and this is really cool, and this is really nice and everything, but I want to stress something about this. You know that we are asking who this was, and it gave us their name. This is Camila. I asked you to put fake data over there, because what will happen if this data gets stolen? What will happen if this data was kept somewhere that wasn't safe, and then someone just downloaded this Excel spreadsheet, or someone emailed the wrong person, or someone sent the information to the wrong office or whatever? What will happen there? Usually what people do to, quote unquote, hide their information is that they will come over here, and instead of adding names, they will add, like, let's say codes, 1, 2, 3, 4, so on and so forth. But then what if I know that one person in this room is from Guatemala and it's a software engineer? Regardless of whether that's the number 10, 2, or whatever, you will know that that's me, right? Because that's very identifiable, and there are very identifiable information, even if you try to, quote unquote, hide it. And that's the issue with it, because even if you take a lot of measurements, how do you know that your data is actually safe? Today, Troy asked this question, and it's, how do we trust, or can we trust these companies with our data, these AI companies? We are giving these AI companies our data. We are giving them financial statements. We are giving them bank records. We are giving them every kind of very useful information, and we don't know what they are doing with it. So how do we trust them? First and most simple answer, we don't. And let me say you again, we do not trust AI companies. I work with AI companies. I develop these kind of models. I don't trust myself. I don't trust AI companies. Why? Because you have to be very aware of that. Because you know that someone eventually will leave their laptop open at a conference somewhere, and somewhere will come over here and take a picture. That picture already has all the information. That picture already has everything they need to break whatever competing company. They will have all the information they need. They will have all the information, basically all the information they want. Because in order to build an AI, you only need two things. Give me 1 second. Here. You need data, and you need a model. Usually, we provide the data. The AI company provides the model. Right now, you provided the data. I provided the model. I provided the algorithm, I provided the program, I provided everything, and you provided me your data. Thank you. That was basically free. I didn't have to ask that much. And that's the real issue, that sometimes someone comes up and just asks ChatGPT, please reply to this email. Copy and paste the email that they just received with very important confidential information, and ChatGPT knows that information, and let me assure you that the people behind ChatGPT will try to use their information for improving ChatGPT. When we data people see a large data set, we are like hungry. We love it when we have a lot of information. Let me tell you that there's nothing that a data engineer loves more than a data set with millions and millions and millions of records. Like, those data sets are literally huge. They have large prices, very large prices. I work in the healthcare industry, and can you imagine how much a data set of a health insurance company will be priced at, for example? Like, how much will that go for in, let's say, the black market? But usually it's not even on black market. You can just go to these companies and literally ask for your data, literally. Like, I can go to any insurance company and just ask, how much is it for getting all this data? Like, in the end, the price doesn't matter, because as long as we profit, like, even if it's a couple millions, if I make a couple millions more, that's it. So again, let me say this again, do not trust AI companies. But what do we do if we don't trust AI companies? And let me talk to you about this project. Can you please go back? Over here. We had this project at UNICEF. This project was called Corazón Contento, Happy Heart in English. This project was aiming to help mothers from rural areas in Guatemala. And these were pregnant women, women that just had birthed their child. And it was really cool because we were helping them with advice for healthcare, advice for how to take care of their newborn, advice on how to go to the hospital, how to go to their nearest healthcare point, because in these places it's like caretakers and that's it. It's not like hospitals, not clinics, nor anything. They're like registered health takers in these places. And we were asking them to go over there. We were asking them to basically take care of their children, right? Because this project was sponsored by the European Union, and it was really nice. It took like 2 or 3 years to complete. And that's me going at the UNICEF offices. We get this consultancy because basically this was a chatbot that just was sending messages to the mothers, and it was sending messages to the pregnant woman, and it was trying to help them through their journey on becoming a mother and on helping their children achieve the magical goal of 5 years old. Because I don't know if you know it, but in a lot of our countries in Latin America, that's the mark. If a child doesn't get to 5 years old, then it's not going to make it. Like after 5 years old, it's like 90% sure that that person will live a healthy life, but prior to that, it's still a risk. So we were trying to help those women. But there was an issue. We had 16,000 people registered over here. We had 10,000 mothers, and we knew everything about them. We knew where they lived. We knew how much time they had been pregnant. We knew when their child was born. We knew everything about it. Can you imagine how private this information is? This is knowing your data literally before you were born. And this is very, 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 very private. Like, there are a lot of companies, like, let's say company like the UN, that really cares about this information. Some of our legislation doesn't care about it. The law in most of our countries doesn't care about it, but we have to take care about it because that's the difference, and that's the deal breaker between you working with the UN and you don't. That's basically it. So what do? We have a lot of ethical challenges over here because we cannot trust anyone with this information, not even ourselves. And the strategy that we made for this was basically removing all the bias in these algorithms. Why? Because these algorithms are looking for specific data points. These algorithms are trying to look for whatever they want, for whatever they need in order to improve themselves. And if you use a public model, it doesn't always work very well. And if you use a model that someone else built, it is very risky. But more importantly, if you give this company your data, it is very, very, very risky. So we have to acknowledge that we have very, very huge risks with this because besides the regulations and besides everything, we have to take care of this data. So what did we do with this? And let me show you this example. Okay, let's say that rather than actually just adding specific IDs to people, we randomize the data. That's the very first thing we do. We don't always have the same input to the same output. We randomize everything, and we encrypt the data. So that's the key to everything. We have to encrypt the data. Please remember this. You have to encrypt your information. How do I know that I am not trusting myself? Because not even myself can see this information. How does that work? There are some tools, and we are going to talk about some strategies about it, but there are some tools that help us with this kind of tasks. Basically, when you encrypt something, you have a key. That key is the key to everything. That key is a one-way path to know and to be able to hide this information. That's the only thing you have to protect. Obviously, you have to protect that with your life and everything, but after you have that key, you can create randomized data. And that's the way we work with that, because let me show you this other project. So we had this other project called Decided. This was really nice. And let me show you, this is, by the way, this is my baby. I really love this project. This was for a company based in the US that helps students achieving their goals of getting into college. I don't know if you know this, but college in the US is very, very expensive. If you have gone to college in the US, you know that it's like 40,000 or so per year or per semester in some places. And being a student, a high school student who doesn't know anything about it, can you imagine how hard it is for most students to get into college in the US? Like, it is very, 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 very difficult. So we started building this tool. This tool helps the students finding the right college for them to attend. It is really nice because over here, I can add multiple colleges. And when I add these colleges, I can say that I receive a scholarship for all of these colleges. I don't know if you knew this, but colleges like Harvard, the MIT, and some of them are actually very cheap if you get a scholarship. And it is actually simple to get a scholarship. It is not very hard to get into Harvard, into MIT, and some of these universities in the sense of not being that expensive. But how do you know that you can even apply to those colleges if you don't know anything about college? So we built this tool where you add the university you want to attend. So let's say that I wanted to attend this one. Okay, so I have this. I want to attend the university in San Diego, but I don't know whether I will be able to pay for that college. I know over here that I need $33,000 per year just to get into that college. But maybe I got a grant. Maybe I got a scholarship. And let's see. That scholarship looks something like this. Let me zoom into that. Okay, over here, you can see that I was granted some of these scholarships, but here's the tricky part. I was given a grant, And then I was given a bunch of loans. So I may think that university will be cheap, but actually, I'm getting myself into a loan basically for the rest of my life. That's how it works in the US, right? That's how it works in a lot of countries. And the student will only see this at the very bottom, $36,000. It's really nice because out of the 33,000 that I need, I got 36. Nice. That's really nice. I can get into college. What we're going to do here is using this tool, we are going to get this data over here. And let's upload our letter. Let's upload all of our financial aid. This will read the letter using artificial intelligence. This will put this image through an artificial intelligence pipeline. We'll read it, we'll understand it, and then we'll take the specific values out of this one, and out of the loans, out of the scholarships, out of the grants, everything, we will know how much money we actually got. Over here, let's go. And now, I know that I still need $15,000 in order to attend this college. You see the difference between the reality, the sad reality of how hard it is to get into college? Because previously I thought that I only needed, that I didn't need anything here. But the sad reality is that I still need all of this. So this application works really nice. This is really cool. This works really great. This uses AI in a bunch of ways because now I can go to my colleges and let's see. These are the ones I cannot afford, for sure. These are the ones that I cannot pay for over here. But I have this one that I can sort of pay for. This is somewhat affordable. And this is working fine. But what happened behind this application? What actually happened when I uploaded my letter? This letter, and this was an anonymized letter, but this letter went through an AI algorithm, and now that AI algorithm knows everything about the student. Everything. If the student takes this loan, if the student actually goes and takes these loans over here, now the AI knows that the student is basically in debt for life. The AI knows everything about the student. That AI can focus the student for the rest of their lives. That AI can provide with advertisement, with tools, and with suggestions about what to do with their loans, because that artificial intelligence knows everything about the student. That artificial intelligence knows where the student lives, because the student had to give that information when they signed up. That artificial intelligence knows how much they pay for college. They know, that artificial intelligence knows what college they are attending, how much debt they're into. That artificial intelligence knows everything. So in our case, we do not trust that artificial intelligence, because this is data from minors. This is data from students who may be 15 years old, 16 years old. This is very, 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 very sensitive data. We do not trust the AI. So what do? Again, when we send the images to the AI, first of all, we blur everything automatically regarding name, we blur everything regarding personal information, and we never tell the artificial intelligence what this data is for. We use a different, literally, we use a different artificial intelligence and a different session every time we send a letter, because we do not trust them. We do not trust them at all. Why? Because in some part of this process, let's imagine that the artificial intelligence wasn't capable of reading the letter. Let's imagine that for some reason, the artificial intelligence wasn't able to read those numbers. You know that most artificial intelligence actually send their data to people in India, to people in Philippines, to people in Bangladesh, whenever the algorithm is not able to understand what's happening? Do you know that mostly, like behind most of these algorithms, there are like actual people looking at your data, and they are deciding, and they are acting instead of the AI? And that's nice because it works. That's really useful. That's cool from an application point of view. But that really sucks for us. Because that means that someone in the Philippines, someone in India, someone in Bangladesh, someone maybe in Latin America is looking at the data. And we cannot trust those people. So that's why prior to sending anything to an artificial intelligence, we have to take care of the data. So if we can go back to the presentation, please. Okay, so what do we actually do in order to trust this? First, we have to be honest about what's happening behind these algorithms. If you take a look at the one that I was building right now, if you could help me with that. This algorithm that I was using, I asked it to tell me what it was doing with your data when it was working. This is something that you can understand with some programming, but it's also very simple natural language. And that transparency is what I like and what I need from AI, because that transparency is everything to me. If I don't have that transparency, I won't trust that AI. Simple. That's it. I won't trust it. Because we have to know how our data is being used. And that's it. Basically, that's the very, very, very first step on AI. If the AI cannot reply why, do not trust it. That's simple. Okay. And then, and most important than anything, if you cannot ask simple questions about how the data was built, what was the model behind that, and if you cannot ask the AI company, hey, can you maybe show me how are you using my data and everything, that's the very first step for that. So remember that? Okay. Now, how do we avoid bias? What is the bias in some of these algorithms? You will know that eventually, and let me go back to this. Okay. Here we have a lot of countries represented here. But sometimes the AI gets biased. Why? Because the data that I am giving to the AI is very uniform and with the information that I'm giving. So for example, let's say that on the professions here, I only had lawyers. I will know that the information that, sorry. Okay, so let's say that out of all the people that I have over here, like 90% of them were lawyers. Then the information will be biased. Then the information will work. And that's the issue with some of these companies, that they are very biased with the data. And here, for example, if we are using let's say, I don't know, financial fraud or anything like that, out of most of the transaction, most of them will be of certain type, and then the algorithm will get biased because of that, and that will be a problem. So what do we do with that? Very simple. We take the data set, and we just create fake data. Oh, sorry. Here, here, here. So now, this fake data will help me unbias my algorithm, because out of, let's say, 100 people, if I previously had 80 lawyers, I literally have to create fake data in order to the algorithm not to get biased. And that's a real pain, but that's something we need to do whenever we work with AI. Okay, so let's get to the main topic for today. How do we actually anonymize the data? First, please, and remember this, whenever you are working with data, never use clear labels. Never use clear information. Even if you don't understand it, that's fine. That is better. The AI will still work. Because over here, if I go to my data set, you remember how I labeled name and Luis, name and Juan, name and someone? The very first step is to anonymize both the data and the labels. That's the very first step. Whenever you have that step done, then you can start encrypting your data. And if you have your data encrypted, then you will have some security, and that will be a very nice addition. But afterwards, you have to implement very clear policies on how you are using your data. Remember that call center in India, remember that person in Bangladesh that was looking at your data, remember that person in the Philippines that was taking a look at your data. You have to impose very clear policies over them. Unless you work with very transparent companies, unless you have those policies in place, you will never be sure. And please remember this. This is basically the law. If someone breaks a policy, if someone breaks anything regarding whatever deal you made with them, if someone ever breaks whatever you did with them in the sense of not complying with data transparency, not complying with data protection, please and directly stop working with them. Have zero tolerance to bad data management. And now, lastly, out of this data, what comes with this? And this is really cool, because whenever you actually successfully achieve privatizing your data, you will be able to have something like this. This is the information from 10,000 students that went through this college application process in the last 2 years. And you will be able to do pretty much the same analysis that you will do with anything else. But that will come after you have privatized everything and you have worked with them on securing the data and everything. And that will be the very, very, very last step will be on reporting to this. But that comes after you have ensured that whoever is looking at this information is working with clear policies and is doing their job in terms of protecting their data. This is what we have been working on in the past few days, in the past few months. And this is really cool because you wouldn't believe this, but the algorithm doesn't know what this data is about. Our dashboard don't make any sense on the inside. Why? Because we have protected the data, and because basically we have told the algorithm that you will not be able to know anything about the data. So this is the very, very, very last step, but if you want to achieve this, you have to take care of this first. So unless you have very, very clear protection policies, data encryption, and anonymization techniques, you won't be able to get over there. So I want to just finish with this. And remember, this is the most important thing about AI. Do not trust it. Do not trust AI. Remember, yesterday Alvaro said something very interesting, and it was that he will never draft a document using AI. Why that is? Why is that? Why isn't he drafting anything with AI? It may be because he doesn't trust the AI professionally, because he knows that he can do a better job at drafting. But also, what do you need for a draft? You need specific information about the person. You need specific information about the case. You need specific information about what's happening. And you are giving this data, maybe not for free, but you are giving the data to the AI. The AI will learn about it, and then for future cases, the AI will know, Alvaro did this. Alvaro used the AI for doing this specific project. So first of all, remember, do not trust AI with your data. Prior to giving your data to any of these artificial intelligence companies, please hide it, block it, do whatever you need with your data. Follow these things, anonymize your data. Instead of giving like your real name, instead of giving a name of the company, the client, or whatever, use a fake ID, use a random number, use whatever you want. But please use anonymized data. Then, whenever you actually need to give data, encrypt that data. Whenever you need to do real data analysis, do not give the data just as it is. And lastly, if you are going to go work with any of these companies, please ensure that these companies are following very clear policies. Ensure that these companies are as strict as you are with your data. Ensure that these companies, in case of some data breach, in case of them being hacked, they will be honest about it. They will communicate this, and please ensure that they will act upon this, and you, more than anything, act upon this. I've seen cases where companies get hacked and don't communicate anything. I've seen companies who actually lost data and never told anyone about it. And only the people who work at those companies know about it, obviously. Only the people and whoever stole it. And then you found your data in some random database from some random country in Asia or whatever, and then you wonder how the data got there. You know that most people get the data stolen in the simplest of ways, a fake email, a scam chat, whatever, yeah, everything. So whenever that happens, you have to be sure that these companies are communicating. They have to be transparent. And these are very simple techniques. Just ask these companies, have you been hacked before? Have you ever lost data? Some companies will be honest about it. Some companies will tell you, yes, we lost some data last year. We got hacked in 2010 or whatever. And what did they do about it? Because in the end, you are only as strong as your providers. You are only as strong as your tools. And if you are using some services from these companies and they are not willing to tell you about it, can you trust them? And think about AI as you think about these companies. Can you trust AI? Can you actually trust this? And just remember this, don't. Never trust any of these companies with your data. If you're going to give your data to any of these companies, please just follow these 3 simple rules. Anonymize your data. Use fake names, fake data, fake everything. If you have to provide your actual data for some data analysis, from some regression analysis, from some actual consultancy, encrypt it before you send it. There are some nice tools for encrypting information. There are some nice tools for hiding information, for anonymizing data, for privatizing data. There are some really nice tools that will help you on this process. And finally, just be sure that you are working with the right people. And that's it. Thank you very much. So if someone had a question about this topic, any questions? Yeah.
So in essence, you're saying don't trust your profession.
Yeah, basically. Pretty much. Yes?
Yes, you spoke about tools. Like, can you give us a list of a few tools for security and encryption?
Sure. So the question was whether I could give some tools for securing this encryption. First and foremost, OneTrust is one of them. It's a very nice tool that encrypts documents, encrypts databases, and encrypts a lot of different information. Then you can literally look for MD5 encryption. That MD5 encryption is what databases use for encrypting their data. So if you get into a server within a data lake, and you take a look at the information from a database, if that database used MD5, which is like the very basic one, that information will be encrypted. So MD5 and OneTrust are probably the ones that I will trust the most. But as always, common sense is the best tool for pretty much everything, so if you can do it by yourself, it will probably be a little bit better.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's a really good question. So the question here was, can I be sure that these companies don't work with OneTrust? That's a really nice question. And something really nice about these tools is that they are first and foremost open source. There are some tools that are open to the public, so you know how they work. Some of these tools also let you tweak how do you want to use it. But most importantly, those tools don't work in an offline server. Those tools are running on your computer, under your local network, so you won't be tracked across the internet, basically. And again, as I love this comment because Jacqueline just said that I'm literally saying, do not trust my profession.
So this encryption tools basically take your data set, encrypt it into some other number, and then when it comes back, Yeah. When they come back, decrypted into your real data. Is that
exactly. So for example, and let me explain this process a little bit. So Troy was saying that encryption is when you take your data, you transform it in some way, and the transformed data is what you send to the AI. So that transformation is what the AI sees, the AI doesn't know anything about it, and when the AI replies with the data, that data will be able to be opened on the other end with your encryption key. So when you receive the data, it will like, let's say, untranslate the data, and then you will be able to see your data in a normal way. That's basically encryption. So you encrypt the data and you transfer it before sending it to the AI company.
Any other question?
So now, with the new policies for Adobe, a lot of people are fighting it back, right? So you said do not trust AI, but at the end, we had to use the tools, right? So how do you go around that? Because a lot of people don't read the small print. They just go and click next, 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 because at the end you need it. How do you go around it?
Yeah, okay, so just repeating the question, and this was a really nice example because Adobe, something like 2 months ago.
They can use your data and basically store it, and you lose the copyright of whatever was built in it. So a lot of companies now are fighting that they have NDAs, and whatever they're creating, now Adobe owns it, and they can use it. Even they said they won't.
And they can train their AI with your data. Yeah, so for those who don't know, Adobe Photoshop, Adobe Premiere, all the Creative Suite, they just updated the policy. So if you work with Adobe Photoshop and you have a legal license to Adobe Photoshop, Adobe basically owns your data now. And they can use your data to train their AI models to improve Photoshop, to improve Premiere, to improve the Creative Studio. And Alex said, there's nothing we can do about it. And sadly, that's true for a lot of tools, but the first thing we can do about it is stop using them. A lot of companies had to move to different tools. Like when this new policy came out, DaVinci Resolve, which was the competing company, literally like tripled the amount of users in 2 days or so, just because everyone was leaving Adobe. But then Alex said something very interesting, and it's that most people do not read the small print. Have you ever read the user license agreement? No one has time for that. That's really true.
Copy the small print, put it on ChatGPT, and make a resume out of it.
Yeah, that's what most people do. Like they copy and paste the user's license agreement into ChatGPT. ChatGPT summarizes the information, the new license and everything, and then you read about it, and then you know about it. But usually, no one does that. So what you can do? First, stop using those tools. It isn't worth it. Your information is more worth it than anything. Your information is valuable. Your information is very, very valuable. Not only for you, it's valuable for the AI company. It is valuable for whoever you are giving it to. So my very first advice is to stop using it. Then, obviously, read the small print. Remember that, read that small print. Some AI companies, and I don't know if you have read the user's agreement on ChatGPT, but ChatGPT will tell you that they can use whatever you prompt into ChatGPT to improve ChatGPT. So if you have ever asked something about something that was coming out of your back, something about a medical condition, something about something very private, now GPT knows about it. And ChatGPT knows everything about you because you have an account. And now ChatGPT knows pretty much everything. And the people who use ChatGPT will also know everything about you, because you never read the small print. So that's why I usually don't use ChatGPT for most of the stuff that I work with. There are some really nice large language models that you can train by yourself with your data that will live in your computer and that you can train in your own servers. That's usually the way to go. Because for a lot of companies, and I don't know if you've seen these zero trust companies, they're literally called like that, they don't use Google Docs, they don't use Gmail, they don't use any cloud-based system just because you cannot trust them. A lot of banks does this. Like some of the banks, very, very big banks, they have their own email service, they have their own Google Drive alternative, they have their own Office suite for everything, and they have their own language models to use the AI. So that's actually the best advice that you can do, because for example, UNICEF, that's what we do. We have our own Office suite, we have our own storage service, something like Google Drive, and we have our own email service, because you cannot trust them. That's the sad reality, that you cannot trust.
Does anyone provide a cloud-based service that enables you to be secure behind, an environment and use those tools maybe at a reduced rate that brings you back some, a service that provides it? Yeah.
Yeah, well, First, myself. That's usually most of my work, and that has been my work for the past few years because, and some of the data cloud providers will help you with this, because what you can do is get your own server in some cloud provider, encrypt that server with their own tools, and let's say, for example, I don't know if you have seen Amazon Cloud is the biggest cloud on the internet, AWS. You can get your own server at AWS, build your AI over there, and build everything by yourself over there, and then train everything without AWS knowing anything about it. You can do that. AWS themselves will help you with those tools, and AWS themselves can help you with building those systems. So AWS is one of those providers, interestingly enough, because it is Amazon. I wouldn't trust them. Yeah, but you can do it. But you can still do it by yourself, definitely. There are some other really nice cloud providers like Linode, Linode. They can do the same for you. DigitalOcean will also do the same for you, provide you with servers that are fully encrypted and with the services for building everything you need on top of those servers. Yeah, AI and everything. Like actually these days, AI is pretty easy to mount in most of these servers, and most of the tools that we've used, like ChatGPT and everything like that, those are very easy to build from the get-go because the models are already out there, and you can just download them and then keep them training with your data that only you can get access to.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Luis Contreras, for your enlightening presentation. Your knowledge is significant to us.
Now, to wrap up our morning sessions, we have Mr. Troy Simmons with us. Before he takes the stage, we will show you a video that highlights his accomplishments and he brings to his work.
Troy Simmons is an experienced chief executive officer with a strong track record in the information, technology, and services industry, skilled in customer service, strategic planning, and business development. Troy has proven his ability to lead and transform organizations. He holds an MBA in business management and marketing from Henley Business School and is currently focused on reducing resource consumption and enhancing recycling strategies. Today, we are honored to have him with us at the GCE Summit Impact 2024. Please welcome Troy Simmons.
We have the ability to respond to this global tax regulation by grasping the opportunity to make our jurisdictions more attractive and increasing the quality of life of all corporate and residential citizens. We will affect global change and equity.
Similar, nah. Just give me powers, yeah, make me jump and fit for hours.
I'll be alive in 2024, so I better thank my Redeemer and, oh, thank you. And didn't certainly think I'd be in South Salvador. But I want to speak to some of the issues that are affecting our regulation in Bermuda, our environment in Bermuda, and hopefully get some input from you on maybe how this all is affecting your jurisdiction. And so basically what I'll speak to is how the OECD Pillar 2 tax regime is affecting EOR services globally, and basically our entire industry if you're an offshore jurisdiction. So for some of you who may not know who the OECD are, it's the Organization for Economic, oh, sorry. Okay, so the OECD is an organization for economic cooperation and development. And basically, it's a non-government organization that formed in around 1961. So it's been around a long time. It works with over 100 government organizations, and they come together to basically come up with policies that will affect all countries and the way they interact with each other to basically build policies that are good for our overall development. So, you know, it's that high-level idea of creating good health, good finance, and good governance globally. If you're a part of the OECD, then you're recognized to be a country in good standing globally. It's kind of like joining the UN and doing all of the right things. So what is Pillar 2 subject to tax regulation? During this period, I said they had organized in 1961. Well, in around 2000, one of the things that has been highlighted is the fact that in many of the offshore jurisdictions like Bermuda, Bahamas, Cayman, and these small jurisdictions, large companies, particularly those that are, profiting billions of dollars, have been structuring themselves in these organizations and basically paying relatively low taxes. Not just relatively low taxes, sometimes no taxes. I remember reading an article in Bermuda that Google had set up there, had been headquartered there. I think it was around 2008 or 9, and they had paid $32,000 in taxes for the year. And it was a huge embarrassment for the country. OECD and other governments were grumbling and saying, how was Bermuda helping Google to hide all of these taxes? So, from that sort of period onward, there have been tax information agreements, TIAs, that all of those organizations and all of these countries have been transferring to each other to find out where these companies are located, how they are structured, and exactly what sort of taxes they've been paying. And basically, they came up with this Pillar 2, subject to tax regulation, as an attempt to ensure that all international companies, inter-border transactions, would pay a minimum tax, as this minimum global tax of about 15%. So the objective was that after they sat down and spoke, somehow they came to this 15% regulation. And that would mean that wherever they were domiciled, they would pay about 15% of their profits in taxes. So it basically forms a package of, it's a regulation that kind of packetized, and if you sign on, then you ensure that these businesses are going to, I went the wrong way, are going to pay it. So it's really designed to prevent circumstances where the income is, where they pay very low taxes or no taxes at all. That's the real strength of this regime. Come on now. No? Okay. So just a while ago, we had, in just 6 days ago, is it me or what? Okay. On September 19th, which wasn't long ago, the initial, after many, many years of working together and coming up with this tax regime, they had about 9 countries sign on to it. And it's anticipated that the rest of these countries globally are also going to sign on. And basically what it means is all of those companies, global companies, that register or that they know about that currently profit over about 750 million euros annually will be made to pay a 15% tax. Now, as I mentioned, in Bermuda, probably for the last 5 years, we've been gearing up for it, as has all the other jurisdictions that are really impacted by it. Because we recognize that in Bermuda, we have about 6 of these jurisdictions. And if you can think of 15% of 750 million times 6 for a small island like Bermuda, it means that if those companies remain in Bermuda, then the GDP, the taxes for the average citizen could possibly go away. It could revolutionize the way we look at our tax structure and our financial standing, etc. But what they've also recognized is that many of these companies, many of these companies are registered globally. The impact of this type of regime is going to add somewhere in the region of $220 billion in taxes for countries like yours and mine. I said that Bermuda, we recognize there are about 6. The governments themselves don't really understand who they are because of the way that they're in these very convoluted corporate structures. but it appears that the OECD does see it. And so what is anticipated with this new tax regime is that there will be so-called level playing field, right? And, you know, we don't take it for granted that the US and the UK and Canada are all looking for these companies to repatriate. Right now, there's a huge impact of an election coming up within the US. And you may recall that when Trump was in power, he made the national tax, what do they call it? Not the national government, but the federal government. Thank you, sir. The federal government, he dropped the tax from 35% to 21%. And so 21% is what these governments will pay on what these organizations will pay, 21% of their taxes. So if they're internationally based, they'll pay 15, and if they're back in the US, they'll pay 21. The interesting thing also is that the way that the OECD has structured it, no matter where you are, so you know, if Bermuda decides they don't want to take that tax, they decide, hey, you know, we're going to work with these companies to deliver, and that company has been identified, then there's an organization in Germany that will take the tax. So it's almost impossible for small jurisdictions, for countries to say, I opt out. You know, you're basically going to ignore huge amounts of taxes coming into your country. You have no option. And then, you know, of course, the OECD is going to threaten to list you as the worst place in the world if you don't comply. So for places like Bermuda, it feels like bang or bust, where, you know, we're seeing this opportunity or the ability for these countries to repatriate. Okay, so what we're seeing here is the initial countries that signed up just in September. That was only last week, I think, just before we arrived, or at least before I arrived. And these other jurisdictions were structured to arrive. To sign up to the agreement as well. They may have already done so. Today is almost the first. So this is what's going on, and some of you will recognize, I think Costa Rica's in the room, so he will recognize. And there are many others that are signing up to this. So what we have seen in Bermuda over the last 5 years is quite encouraging. And so what I really wanted to do is to hear from you what you may have seen in your jurisdictions. And what I mean by encouraging is, to some extent, is encouraging, but it's also challenging. In the last 5 years, we've seen these companies, because they appear to have accepted they're going to pay it, they seem like they're investing in Bermuda. They have decided that Bermuda, if I'm going to pay taxes there, then maybe our executives ought to reside here. And what we've seen is the purchase of properties and, you know, investment in buildings and you know, ideas that are what we think in the Caribbean, at least in Bermuda, is completely outlandish. You know, building islands off of the island, and just all kinds of wide and weird ideas that would come out of the brains of probably people that are highly financed and trying to find projects. And so it seems like it could be a positive thing. One of the things I do recognize is that the intellectual property, I can try it again now? Yeah. Okay. The intellectual property of these people is pretty significant. And so having those kind of mindsets in your country can determine a lot of how influential the country is and the type of stickiness industries are to your country. Let me just see if I can catch up. Sorry. Seems like some of it's missing. So when I speak to intellectual properties, I mean, you know, in Bermuda we have the insurance reinsurance business, which was really set up in the early 50s by someone out of the US, Hank Greenberg of AIG, that structured our laws so that they could attract insurance companies. And so what we're seeing is potentially huge growth, but also potentially big bust. And I wanted to, you know, solicit I mean, these are, these are companies with a threshold of $750 million of income. They're the Googles that you see in Bahamas and others, but some companies, you know, names that we don't even recognize. And with that movement, you know, it really is set to make tremendous difference globally. Because if they stay where they are or they move continuously, you know, into other jurisdictions, they could have significant impact. And, you know, when I look at some other global things that are happening, you know, like the U.S.'s influence waning over the last 5 years, you know, China's growth against it, BRIC nations overtaken, I start to think that maybe those executives will in fact continue to move and relocate and influence differently in different parts of the world. So I really wanted to hear, I guess, from you what you've been feeling and the impact that you've noticed, or just some anecdotal ideas of how this can impact our global economy and our countries in particular.
Well, I do know that the Bahamas would probably be one of those countries that they threaten with this, because a lot of our income comes from these global companies that don't pay direct taxes, but pay indirect taxes into the country, like Google. So my business has Google as a client, for instance. As an EOR services. So it's an indirect way that Google plays into our country. But it's not beneficial based on my understanding. I understand what they're trying to accomplish, but it won't be beneficial to us to sign on to it. So we'll probably be one of those countries they threaten to be able to sign on to the OECD, to be honest.
Okay.
My question is, when you get listed, what are the impact in terms of do they restrict your business in terms of transfer from that country that is listed?
Right. So one of the good question, because what's the teeth in it, right? What can they really control? So for the most part, they go initially after that company. You know, once a company is listed, it is seen to be globally non-compliant. And once you're globally non-compliant, it's a pretty uncomfortable place to be. As is, you know, Jackie mentions that you can stand off and say, sorry, we're just not signing up. But for those companies or countries that don't sign up, and there will be those, the countries are still being mandated to pay elsewhere. So the interesting thing about it is by not signing up, you don't tweak your tax base to adjust. So for example, if I am Google, we're beating up on Google right now, but if I am Google and I decide to reside in the Bahamas, then I will be mandated to pay 15%, but then I'm still mandated to pay your taxes, which I think you mentioned yesterday were about 12%. So ultimately, and there's probably a couple of others, because so I think your tax rate is probably about 16 to 21. Right. So I'm going to pay 15 plus the 20, which is 36%. So now the Bahamas is not attractive. So, you know, if you don't sign up and adjust, then you will present as less financially attractive. You see what I mean? Yeah. So that's it. Now as far... No direct penalty other than the attractiveness of the region. Wow. When you 15% of 750 million is a big penalty, if you know what I mean. But yes, nobody's going to be marched off to the gallows. They're just going to pay. Correct. Yeah.
But that's the whole point of offshore, no?
Right. But yeah. So you're saying it undermines the whole purpose of offshore, right? Yeah. Right. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's why I'm saying that's the real. So I mean, I
So
mentioned
why you letting it happen? Why you
I
letting
mentioned the
it happen?
U.S. economy, right? Because Kamala Harris says she wants to increase the rate to 28%. She's going to make taxes 28. Bush originally moved them down from 35 to 21 after Obama pushed them up after, you know, all of the subprime mortgages I was just talking about, and all of that failed, right? So all of that determines, you know, where these companies will reside, et cetera. Yeah, but it's a challenge for offshore. It's a huge challenge for offshore. But, you know, yeah. I mean, I guess countries and companies don't want to just reside somewhere. What they're hoping to do is have them just reside because of taxes, but for other purposes, like regulation, you know, and yeah, et cetera.
On your expert opinion, China.
Oh, yeah, okay. Yeah.
What is the projection in terms of?
Well, I know that China has, as far as purchasing power, China has overtaken the U.S., right? And I guess one of the things that, you know, I'd like to consider is that if it's a U.S. company, or a lot of these companies are now global companies, they don't just make revenue in the U.S., but they do so globally. And a part of this regulation is that a company will choose its tax jurisdiction. So, for example, if I choose Costa Rica, I'm going to pay my taxes in Costa Rica. What I'm saying is if it's going to behave like it has in Bermuda, they'll choose Bermuda and start to invest there. Or if they choose Costa Rica, then maybe they'll start to invest in Costa Rica as their choice of domicile. You know?
Okay.
Is it?
Yeah, but if you would project when is China taking over? 2030?
Well, no. I mean, China's purchasing power is already above the U.S. I mean, there are a number of. I actually used some AI tools to try to say when exactly, but I couldn't get any. It was too many variables. Then they couldn't answer it the way I had hoped. Maybe I'd asked the right question. But the BRIC nations also, right? It's, you know, they're predicted in the next 10 or so to make a difference. But I guess that's all about which government and which leader and exactly what's done between now and then, which pushes that timeline back and forward. Oh, yeah. But yeah, I had also just grabbed a few stats. I talked about the reason. How come I can't get it to work? Hang on. So you talked about, so real GDP and the way that the year on year, I was looking at this from the OECD as well, and the way countries are growing, you'll see the US, where are they? Yeah, way down, right? Yeah, so, you know, yeah, there it is, 2.6. And so companies are choosing where they go based on a lot of factors. This was, I grabbed this was out of Cayman, the way that real estate has been growing. Anyway, something specifically about our jurisdiction and these types of things, and So has anybody seen any movement of some of these large companies into their jurisdictions or activities in any way that you can sort of tie to it? Well, that's what we've seen. That's literally what we've seen. Like, you know, executives we were speaking yesterday and we were talking about names of people, right? So we've always seen, you know, in Bermuda was Berlusconi, has that property there. But now what we're seeing is the executives, you know, of those large companies, and, you know, I'll buy that neighborhood. That's different. And the only reason I can see that happening is because they seem to be tied to their tax domicile. You know, Bermuda hasn't changed, if you know what I mean. Like, that's the only significant change that I've seen. Now there's a tax domicile that they're tied to, and they just view it differently. I guess it's like giving to your church. I don't know.
Amen.
There's no comments? Love your input. Oh, thanks very much. Appreciate you listening. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Troy, for these valuable words. Now we have to finish, before lunch, we have a quick activity in order to finish all the speakers that have been here. So let's continue. So how is the activity? Now that all the speakers are done, I want to ask someone random one thing that you learned from yesterday and today. So everyone can share so far what we learned so far. So who want to start? Someone. You, go ahead.
AI is the future, but don't trust it. So
there you go. AI.
Just give me the mic.
You someone that you learned from yesterday or today.
Don't trust AI?
That is already by here. Something different. Who else? Who can help me? Francisco.
Yeah, well, everyone already said about don't trust, but also we learned all the utilities and benefits we can get from AI. And we learned also about a little bit of the tax and what just Sir Simon said about Bermuda, and everything's been very interesting. I think we can get so much learning from all the colleagues we have from GCE family, now that we're a family. And yeah, that's it.
Thank you. This side, someone to share? There you go. Don't trust. Oh my God.
Remember, don't trust.
No, actually, just a clarification. You can trust AI. You cannot trust the companies that are building AI. Yeah, just want to make that clarification. AI by itself is really cool. It works. It's really nice. You can trust it. Don't trust the companies that are providing the AI services.
Someone else, there you go. I want to hear everyone.
Yeah, AI is not here to replace humans, but just to make us work a little smarter.
Thank you so much. Who is missing? No? Nobody else? All right, well, now that we are done, I will be inviting you to lunch. Let me see what time it is. All right. So, sorry. So right now, we will be just waiting a little bit. The lunch is going to be the same place that we take the lunch yesterday. We will have lunch from 1 to 2. So I will be waiting for you guys to continue the event at 2 p.m., all right? Any questions so far? No? Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Second verse for the hustlers, gangsters, bad bitches and your ugly ass friends. I cannot preach, I gotta show them how I can't get it in. First, take your sip, do your dip, spend your money like money ain't shit. Ooh, we too fresh. Got to blame it on Jesus. Hashtag blessed. They ain't ready for me. I'm a dangerous man with some money in my pocket. Keep up. So many pretty girls around me and they're waking up the rocket. Keep up. Why you mad? Fix your face. Ain't my fault they all be jocking. Keep up. Players only. Come on, put your pinky rings up to the moon. Girls, what y'all trying to do? What you trying to do? 24 karat magic in the air. Head to toe so clear. Look out.
제 나침반 보고 갑니다.
Everywhere I go, they be like, ooh, so bad. Everywhere I go, they be like, ooh, so bad. Everywhere I go, they be like, ooh, so bad. Now, watch me break it down like, 24 karat, 24 karat. What's that sound? 24 karat.